Sometimes, the most effective revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. I say quietly, watching the snow fall outside my new corner office. It's about letting them destroy themselves while you simply document everything. The digital clock on my desk silently shifts to 9 a.m. Exactly 1 year ago, at this precise moment, I was sitting across from Ryan in his cramped office, listening to him explain why firing me 3 days before Christmas was just business. Now, as I prepare for the quarterly board meeting at Nexicare Pharmaceuticals, where I serve as CTO, I can't help but smile at the irony. My name is Nicole. I'm 38 years old, and this is the story of how I turned a brutal betrayal into the most satisfying victory of my career. The morning it all began started normally enough. December 22nd, 2024, was supposed to be just another Monday at Vertex Dynamics. I'd spent 15 years building my reputation in pharmaceutical data architecture, the last 3 of which had been dedicated to creating and maintaining Vertex's critical trial tracking system. It was my masterpiece, a complex integration framework that seamlessly connected research data with regulatory submissions across multiple platforms. The quarterly system audit looks perfect, I told Ryan during our morning meeting, sliding the report across his desk. 0 anomalies, all verification protocols functioning at optimal levels. Ryan barely glanced at the document, his attention fixed on his phone. Great work, Nicole. Listen, could you stop by my office at 9 o'clock? There's something we need to discuss. His tone was casual, but something in it made my stomach tighten. I'd been in the industry long enough to recognize when someone was trying too hard to sound normal. The next 3 hours crawled by as I reviewed system logs and responded to client queries. Sophia, the junior developer I'd been training for the past 6 months, seemed unusually quiet, avoiding eye contact when we passed in the hallway. At precisely 9 a.m., I knocked on Ryan's door. He wasn't alone. Diana, our CEO, stood by the window, her expression carefully neutral. That's when I knew. Nicole, please sit down, Ryan gestured to the chair across from his desk. We've been reviewing our organizational structure and... He paused, glancing at Diana before continuing. We've decided to streamline our database management team. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap, as Ryan explained how Sophia could handle the basic maintenance of my system. How young talent brought fresh perspectives. How they could pay her less than half my salary. It's just business, he said, leaning back in his chair with a practiced look of regret. Nothing personal. The betrayal burned, but what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that my system was far more complex than they imagined. The elegant architecture I'd built wasn't just about maintaining databases, it was about preventing catastrophic failures that could compromise years of clinical trial data. Sophia knows the basics, I said carefully, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. But she doesn't understand the integration points, the system architecture, the fail-safe protocols. Diana stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. All documented in your process manuals, correct? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. That's what we pay you for. Ryan slid a document across the desk, my severance agreement. 2 weeks' pay, standard confidentiality clauses, and a request for immediate surrender of my security credentials. As I gathered my personal items from my desk, Nathan, our lead developer, approached with an awkward expression. Nicole, I had no idea this was happening. They didn't consult the technical team at all. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Just then, a notification popped up on my screen, critical error, trial database XRN 2024 requires manual synchronization. I started to explain the error resolution process to Nathan, but Ryan appeared, ushering me toward the exit. Sophia can handle it, he said firmly. It's time for you to go. What Ryan, Diana, and even Sophia didn't realize was that they had just set in motion a sequence of events that would ultimately lead to their own downfall. Because sometimes, the most devastating response to betrayal isn't immediate retaliation, it's patience. As I drove home through the gently falling snow, my mind was already formulating a plan. They thought they were simplifying their system. What they had actually done was remove the only person who truly understood its complexity. And in the pharmaceutical industry, where data integrity can literally be a matter of life and death, that decision would prove to be their fatal mistake. Little did they know, this wasn't just the end of my time at Vertex Dynamics, it was the beginning of their nightmare. The first signs of chaos emerged faster than even I had anticipated. Within 48 hours of my departure, my phone began lighting up with LinkedIn notifications and desperate text messages from former colleagues. Each message revealed another piece of the unfolding disaster at Vertex Dynamics. "Nicole, the system's throwing errors I've never seen before," Nathan messaged late Christmas Eve. "Ryan keeps saying it's normal, but something feels really wrong." I watched the messages pile up without responding. Part of me wanted to help, these were my former colleagues, after all, and that system was my creation. But another part of me, the part that still burned from the betrayal, knew that sometimes the best revenge is simply stepping aside and letting natural consequences unfold. On December 26th, I received an unexpected call from Amanda, a senior researcher at one of Vertex's biggest clients. "Nicole, please tell me you're still handling our trial data," she said, her voice tense. "We're seeing inconsistencies in our latest results." "I'm no longer with Vertex," I replied calmly. "But I'm sure Sophia can assist you." Amanda's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. "Sophia? The junior developer?" "Nicole, we have a $50 million trial at stake here." I ended the call with polite reassurances, but inside, I was counting down. 3, 2, 1. My phone rang again. Ryan's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times before leaving a message. "Nicole, we need to talk. There's been a situation. Call me back immediately." I didn't. Instead, I spent the next few days updating my resume and fielding calls from recruiters. My reputation in the pharmaceutical data architecture field meant I had options. Several promising interviews were already lined up, including one with Nexicare Pharmaceuticals, Vertex's main competitor. On December 30th, Sophia herself called. Her voice was shaking. "Nicole, I'm so sorry," she began. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "What exactly has happened, Sophia?" I kept my tone neutral, professional. She hesitated. "Ryan, he asked me to implement some optimizations to the verification protocols. He said they were just slowing things down unnecessarily. When I questioned it, he said you had already approved the concept before leaving." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. "Did you make these changes?" "Yes," she whispered. "And now everything's falling apart. Client data isn't syncing properly, trial results are showing inconsistencies, and the regulatory compliance module is flagging errors across the board. Ryan's telling everyone it's just temporary bugs from the transition, but..." She paused. "Nicole, he's lying. He knows exactly what he did." "And what was that, Sophia?" "He wanted to prove your system was over-engineered. That all those safety protocols you built were just unnecessary complexity. He thought if he could streamline it, it would justify." She trailed off. "Justify firing me?" I finished for her. "Yes. But it's worse than that. Diana knew. She approved his plan. They thought if they could show the system worked fine without all your extra safeguards, they could implement the same changes across other projects. Cost savings, they called it." I closed my eyes, imagining the cascade of failures that must be occurring. Every safeguard I'd built had been there for a reason. Each verification protocol protected against specific types of data corruption. Removing them wasn't optimization, it was sabotage. "Nicole." Sophia's voice was small. "What should I do?" "Document everything," I said simply. "Every change, every error, every conversation." "And Sophia?" "Save it somewhere outside the company network." After hanging up, I received another surprise call, this time from Marcus, Vertex's lead legal counsel. "Nicole, I need to discuss something concerning with you," he began without preamble. "We've discovered some irregularities in the system changes implemented after your departure. Changes that appear to have been backdated to before your termination." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh. Yes. Someone attempted to make it look like you had approved significant modifications to the system architecture. The timestamps have been altered." "That's a serious allegation, Marcus." It is. Especially given that these changes may have compromised the integrity of multiple clinical trials. The FDA takes a dim view of data manipulation in pharmaceutical research. I allowed myself a small smile. I imagine they do. Nicole, I need to know, did you authorize any system changes before your departure? No, Marcus, I did not. And I suspect you already knew that, or you wouldn't be calling me. He sighed heavily. I was afraid of that. Listen, this stays between us, but there's something else you should know. Diana's been selling company stock. Large amounts, starting the day after you left. Now that was interesting. Before or after the system changes were implemented? Before. And Ryan's been doing the same. The picture was becoming clearer. They hadn't just wanted to justify firing me, they'd planned to profit from the inevitable stock drop when their optimizations caused the system to fail. On January 2, 2025, Ryan finally showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as he knocked repeatedly, his normally perfectly pressed shirt wrinkled, his hair disheveled. Nicole, please, he called through the door. The whole system's collapsing. We need you back. Name your price. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. My price. I smiled coldly. Ryan, you've already paid it. You just don't know it yet. His face paled. What do you mean? You'll find out soon enough. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a job interview to prepare for. I closed the door on his stunned face, feeling a deep satisfaction. Because what Ryan didn't know was that I had already accepted an offer from Nexicare Pharmaceuticals, not just as their new CTO, but with a specific mandate to develop a rescue plan for Vertex's clients when the inevitable exodus began. Nathan called that evening. Nicole, you need to know something. I've been keeping records of everything since you left. The unauthorized changes, the backdated approvals, the stock sales, all of it. I think Ryan and Diana were planning this for months. Thank you, Nathan. Keep documenting everything. And Nathan? How would you feel about a job at Nexicare? His relief was palpable. You have no idea how good that sounds right now. The next day, I received an official email from Vertex's HR department, offering to bring me back as a consultant at $300 per hour to assist with system optimization. I replied accepting the offer, knowing it would give me access to gather the final pieces of evidence I needed. What Diana and Ryan never understood was that in the world of pharmaceutical data architecture, trust once broken can't be repaired with money. By the time I walked back into Vertex's offices on January 5th, I had everything in place for their complete downfall. Sometimes, revenge isn't about what you do, it's about what you let others do to themselves while you simply watch and wait. And in this case, all I had to do was document the destruction they had engineered for themselves. Sometimes, revenge isn't about what you do, it's about what you let others do to themselves while you simply watch and wait. And in this case, all I had to do was document the destruction they had engineered for themselves. Later that evening, I received another unexpected visitor, Diana herself. She stood in my doorway, perfect posture and expensive suit as always, but there was something different in her eyes. Fear, perhaps? Nicole, we need to talk privately, she said, her voice lower than usual. Not about the system, about Ryan. This was interesting. I let her in, watching as she perched uncertainly on my living room sofa. Ryan's becoming unstable, she began, carefully choosing her words. He's making threats, implying he'll expose certain board decisions if we don't support his version of events. He's trying to make you the scapegoat for everything. And you're here to warn me out of the goodness of your heart? I kept my tone neutral, but couldn't entirely hide my skepticism. Diana's perfectly manicured hands twisted in her lap. I'm here because I know how this game is played. Ryan's drowning, and he'll pull anyone down with him to save himself. Including me. She paused, meeting my eyes directly. I can offer you protection. A better severance package, excellent references, even a senior position at one of our partner companies. I studied her face, noting the slight sheen of sweat on her forehead despite the winter chill. In exchange for what? Sign a statement. Say you approve the system changes before leaving. Take responsibility for any irregularities in the documentation. I couldn't help but laugh. You want me to commit fraud to save you and Ryan? To save all of us, she corrected sharply. Including yourself. Nicole, you don't understand what Ryan is capable of when cornered. He's already talking about claiming you deliberately sabotaged the system before leaving. I walked to my window, looking out at the snow-covered city. Diana, let me tell you what I understand. I understand that you and Ryan planned my termination months ago. I understand that you sold company stock knowing the system would fail. And I understand that right now, you're not afraid of Ryan, you're afraid of what the FDA will find when they investigate why critical trial data was compromised. The color drained from her face. The FDA? Did you really think no one would notice? That the clients whose trial data you've corrupted wouldn't ask questions? I turned back to face her. You're not here to protect me, Diana. You're here because you finally realized just how deep the hole is that you and Ryan have dug. She stood abruptly, her composure cracking. You have no proof of anything. Don't I? I smiled, thinking of the documents Nathan had been collecting, of Sophia's recorded conversations, of Marcus's legal concerns. I guess we'll find out soon enough. After she left, I sat down at my computer and began composing a detailed email. Not to Ryan, or Diana, or even to the FDA, but to Nexicare's board of directors, outlining my strategy for absorbing Vertex's soon-to-be former clients. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't just watching your enemies fall, it's being the one to catch their clients when they do. My first day back at Vertex Dynamics as a consultant revealed just how deeply the corruption had spread. Walking through the office, I noticed the tense atmosphere immediately. Employees spoke in whispers, quickly dispersing when Ryan or Diana appeared. The once collaborative environment had become a nest of suspicion and fear. Nicole. Sophia rushed up to me in the break room, her eyes darting nervously around. I need to tell you something important. Not here, can we talk somewhere private? I followed her to the empty conference room. As soon as the door closed, she broke down. Ryan's been threatening me, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. He says if I don't back up his story about the system changes, he'll make sure I never work in pharmaceuticals again. He even implied he has friends at other companies who could blacklist me. I felt a surge of protective anger. Sophia was barely out of college, and Ryan was using her career as leverage. Do you have any of these threats documented? She nodded, pulling out her phone. I started recording our conversations after that first time. I knew something was wrong, but I was scared. The recordings were damning. Ryan's voice, increasingly aggressive, demanding Sophia sign false statements about the system changes. Threatening her future, her reputation, even making veiled threats about her personal safety. There's more, Sophia whispered. Diana, she knows about the threats. She was there during one of them. She just stood there, smiling, like it was all perfectly normal. Just then, my phone buzzed, a text from Nathan, emergency meeting called. Boardroom. Now. When I entered the boardroom, the tension was palpable. Ryan sat at the head of the table, Diana to his right. Both looked surprised to see me. This is a private meeting, Ryan snapped. Actually, Nathan spoke up, I invited Nicole. She needs to hear this. Ryan started to object, but Nathan continued, his voice steady. We've uncovered evidence of systematic harassment and intimidation within the development team. Multiple employees have come forward with recordings and documentation. Diana's perfect composure slipped for just a moment. These are internal matters. Internal matters like threatening junior employees? I interrupted, placing my phone on the table. Or internal matters like manipulating stock prices? Ryan's face reddened. You have no right. Play the recordings, Nathan, I said quietly. For the next 20 minutes, the room filled with Ryan's own voice, threatening Sophia, bullying other developers, discussing stock manipulation with Diana. With each recording, their faces grew paler. There's one more thing, Nathan added, sliding a document across the table. This is an email chain showing Ryan and Diana planning Nicole's termination 3 months ago, specifically timed to manipulate stock prices before the system changes. Diana stood abruptly. These recordings were obtained illegally. They'll never stand up in court. I smiled. You might want to check your state's recording consent laws, Diana. Besides, I don't think the SEC or FDA particularly care how evidence of securities fraud and data manipulation comes to light. They just care that it exists. Ryan's composure finally cracked. You think you're so clever, don't you? You have no idea what I can do to you. Are you threatening me, Ryan? I asked calmly. Please, continue. The recording's still running. He lunged across the table, but Nathan was faster, stepping between us. Security arrived moments later, drawn by the commotion. Get her out of here. Ryan shouted, but the security guards didn't move. Actually, said a new voice from the doorway, I think it's you who needs to leave, Ryan. Marcus, the lead counsel, entered with 2 men in suits. These gentlemen are from the SEC. They have some questions about recent stock transactions and system modifications. What followed was the most satisfying hour of my professional life. I watched as Ryan and Diana were escorted from the building, their company phones and laptops confiscated as evidence. But the real satisfaction came from what happened next. The board called an emergency meeting. Client representatives were patched in via video conference. One by one, they announced their intentions to transfer their business to Nexicare Pharmaceuticals, where, coincidentally, I would be starting as CTO the following week. It's not just about the system failures, Amanda, the senior researcher, explained to the board. It's about trust. You allowed a culture of intimidation and corruption to flourish. You put profits above both people and data integrity. How can we trust you with our trials after this? By day's end, Vertex's stock had plummeted. Diana and Ryan were placed on administrative leave pending multiple investigations. But I wasn't done yet. I had one final meeting, with Sophia. I've been offered a position at Nexicare, she said hesitantly. But after everything, I don't know if I deserve it. You made mistakes, I acknowledged. But you also had the courage to come forward. That counts for something. Why are you helping me? After what I did. Because everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone except those who abuse their power to hurt others. The next morning, the story broke in the industry press, Vertex Dynamics under investigation for securities fraud and data manipulation. Ryan and Diana's names were prominently featured, along with details of their harassment and intimidation campaign. Within a week, Ryan was officially terminated for cause, his reputation in the industry destroyed. Diana resigned ahead of criminal charges for securities fraud. The board was restructured, and Vertex's stock continued its downward spiral. But the most satisfying moment came 2 weeks later, when I sat in my new corner office at Nexicare, reviewing resumes for my team. Nathan was already installed as head of development. Sophia would be starting next week, under careful mentorship. And on my desk was a letter from the FDA, formally thanking me for bringing the data manipulation to their attention. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It was Ryan, you've destroyed everything I built. I hope you're happy. I thought about his years of manipulation, the lives he'd impacted, the careers he'd threatened. I thought about Sophia's tears and Nathan's quiet courage. Then I typed my reply. No, Ryan. You destroyed everything you built. I just made sure everyone saw you do it. Then I blocked his number and turned back to my work. Because the best revenge isn't just about winning, it's about making sure those who abuse their power never have the chance to do it again. That evening, as I left the office, I passed the wall where Nexicare displayed its company values. Integrity first was at the top of the list. I smiled, thinking how Ryan and Diana had never understood that true power comes not from intimidation or manipulation, but from earning trust and respect. My team was gathering for a welcome dinner, faces both old and new, united by a shared commitment to doing things right. As I joined them, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't just about destroying your enemies. Sometimes, it's about building something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. Nathan raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings? I looked around at my team, at Sophia's renewed confidence, at Nathan's quiet strength, at the fresh faces eager to learn and grow in a healthy environment. To new beginnings, I agreed. And to karma. Because in the end, that's what this was: karma, delivered through patience, documentation, and the simple act of letting corrupt people destroy themselves while making sure everyone could see them do it. The next morning, I received one final email from Vertex's board. They were being acquired by a larger competitor, at a fraction of their former value. Ryan and Diana's actions had cost the company billions. But as I looked around my new office, at my thriving team and growing client list, I knew that sometimes losing everything is the only way for justice to be served. And sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in the fall of your enemies, but in the rise of those they tried to destroy. 3 months after I took over as CTO at Nexicare, on a quiet Sunday evening, my doorbell rang insistently. When I checked the security camera, I saw Diana and Ryan standing there, a far cry from their former polished selves. Diana's designer clothes had been replaced by department store wear, and Ryan's confident stance was now a nervous shuffle. "Nicole, please," Diana called out. "We need to talk. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, but with my phone recording in my pocket, I opened the door. "You've made your point," Ryan burst out before I could speak. "You've won. Now call off the investigations. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding." I leaned against the doorframe, studying them. A misunderstanding? Like threatening Sophia was a misunderstanding? Or manipulating stock prices was a misunderstanding? "We can make it worth your while," Diana cut in, her voice desperate. "I still have connections." "We can." "Still trying to manipulate people, Diana? Even now?" I shook my head. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. It never was." Ryan's face darkened. "Then what do you want? Revenge? You've got it. I'm unemployable. Diana's facing criminal charges. What more do you want from us?" "I don't want anything from you," I replied calmly. "That's what you never understood. This wasn't about what I did to you. This was about what you did to yourselves. I just made sure there was nowhere to hide." Diana stepped forward, her composure cracking completely. "They're going to put me in jail, Nicole. Actual jail. All because you couldn't just play along, take the severance, and go quietly. No, Diana. You're going to jail because you committed fraud, threatened employees, and compromised pharmaceutical trial data. Actions have consequences. It's time you both faced yours." Ryan suddenly lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. "You self-righteous bit." Before he could finish, 2 police officers stepped out of the stairwell. I'd called them the moment I saw Ryan and Diana on my security camera. "Perfect timing," I said to the officers. "I believe these 2 are violating the restraining order I have against them. And I have the whole conversation recorded." As the officers led them away, Diana looked back at me one last time. "I hope you're happy with yourself." "Actually, I am," I replied honestly. "Completely happy." 2 weeks later, I watched the news coverage of Diana's sentencing for securities fraud, 5 years in federal prison. Ryan had already pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony, receiving 2 years plus probation. More satisfying were the civil suits from former employees, which would ensure that neither of them would ever work in the industry again. But the real victory was what I saw when I looked around my office at Nexicare. Sophia had blossomed into a confident developer, mentoring new team members with the patience and attention I'd once shown her. Nathan had revolutionized our development processes, creating an environment of collaboration and innovation. Our client list had tripled, many of them former Vertex clients who'd followed us. The system I'd designed was now handling more data than ever, with enhanced safety protocols that had become the industry standard. We'd just been featured in a major tech publication as a model of ethical data management in pharmaceuticals. "Nicole?" My assistant poked her head in. "The board wants to congratulate you. The Johnson acquisition just closed. We're now the largest pharmaceutical data management company on the West Coast." I smiled, remembering that snowy December morning when I'd been told I was expendable. Now, standing in my corner office, I looked out at the city skyline and thought about how sometimes the worst betrayals lead us exactly where we need to be. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Vertex Dynamics had just been sold for pennies on the dollar, its name and reputation too tarnished to continue. The article mentioned Ryan and Diana as cautionary tales of corporate corruption. That evening, I hosted a team dinner at my home, something the old Nicole would never have done. But this version of me understood that true leadership isn't about power or control, it's about building trust and nurturing talent. As I looked around at my team, at Sophia sharing a joke with our newest developer, at Nathan discussing project ideas with such enthusiasm, I realized that this was the real victory. Not the destruction of my enemies, but the creation of something better. Something built on integrity, respect, and the simple principle that how you treat people matters. A toast, Nathan called out, raising his glass. To Nicole, who taught us that standing up for what's right isn't just good ethics, it's good business. And to second chances, Sophia added, her eyes meeting mine with understanding. I raised my own glass, thinking of how far we'd all come. To justice, I said. And to building something worth protecting. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat in my home office, looking at the framed article about our company's rise to industry leadership. Next to it was a small note Sophia had given me, which read simply, "Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." My phone buzzed one last time, another news alert. Ryan had been spotted working as a junior sales associate at a small software company in another state. Diana's appeal had been denied. I closed the alert without reading further. Their story wasn't my concern anymore. My story was here, in this thriving company we'd built, in the lives we'd changed, in the industry we'd helped make better. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about watching your enemies fall. It's about rising so far above them that they become nothing more than a distant memory, a lesson in what happens when you choose power over integrity, and manipulation over truth. I am Nicole, and this is what justice looks like when served cold, calculated, and complete. But more importantly, this is what success looks like when built on the ashes of those who thought they could destroy you. Looking out at the city lights, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to build something meaningful. And I was ready for all of it. Because I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was a builder. A leader. A force for change. And that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all.